Hi guys, and welcome to Open Ended. I'm here with my friend Mary Silva, an amazing avid adventurer and traveler. Super excited to have you here, Mary. You're an amazing person, and it's so exciting to have you finally sitting down with me and having this conversation.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Mary and I go way back. We met in Canterbury, England, when we both were studying abroad at the University of Kent back in 2015, right,
Yeah,
Mary?
2015. It's been 5 years,
Yeah,
nearly.
I
Oh my
know.
gosh.
It's going so quickly. We met because I think we reached out to one another about potentially traveling to Rome or Italy together. And I think there
Yes,
was like this online group for people that were connecting that were study abroad students at the university.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. And I wanted to go with you guys. Wasn't able to go because I
Yeah.
think I had like some project or something. But
I
yeah,
don't actually remember, but yeah, I remember you were super excited. It was
yeah.
my friend Michelle and myself, and we had reached out. Anyone else want to join us? Especially American exchange students that want to go along with us. But yeah, it's so sad that you didn't get to join us in the
I
end.
know
It was so sad.
it was a one of those like I really wish I had gone and stuff, and it was just it really I think it was like something with my program where I was like, oh, I can't get away from this. So
Oh man,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's okay, you know.
Yeah, I faintly remember that.
Hmm.
We had met up in that like cafe at the university to kind of discuss, oh, by the way, we're going to try and go on these dates if you want to come along with us and so on and so forth.
That's
Um,
right.
it
Yeah.
ended up being a great trip and I wish you would have come with us, but regardless, our friendship thankfully still blossomed thereafter, which
Yes.
is I'm super lucky that that did, keep going even after you didn't come to Rome with us.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember like the first time we like talked, I guess, after the trip. Did we discuss how Italy had gone for us, or I don't
I
know?
guess so. I think we just had like I think I was like, oh, she's really cool. I really want to ask her. And I remember asking you guys because you was like, oh, we got catcalled and like we had all these men like try to give us roses, and I was like, oh my god.
That's right. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. I wish I could tell you that whole story right now, but it would take forever. But me and my friend Michelle were just like, wow, Italian men are like something else. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
stressful, especially I think for my friend. She was just like super not having it. Like
Oh
she was so
no.
anxious at like
Oh
the
no.
persistence of some of the
Yeah.
people. And for me, I was just like I guess a little bit older, so I was always kind of like more put on like a
Yeah.
hard face and like be mean to them or
Yeah.
like leave me alone. But no, it just got to her and yeah, it was funny. It was a she kind of grew to I guess feel a little bit more comfortable throughout the trip. But in the beginning, she was just so flustered.
That's
Um,
it
yeah,
is like a bit jarring, I guess, if it's just like, oh
yeah,
my god, these guys are aggressive. But
right.
yeah. Yeah, no, and I do think I was like, oh, I wonder how it went. And I think we just kept talking, and then you were just like, oh yeah, I'm having my birthday. Do you want to come? And I we must have just kept
Oh, that's right.
chatting.
Is that
Yeah.
really when we hung out next? That's so funny. Yeah, I guess it was. Like you hung out with us during my 26th birthday. We headed out to London for
Yes.
the night.
Yeah, it was such a good. I still think it's such a well planned night. Like you did it so well. You had like, okay, at this time we're gonna do this, and I was just like, this is perfect. Like, yeah. Until we almost missed that last tube. Do you remember? We were in
Oh, it
like,
was the last train back to Canterbury, I
yeah, or yeah, the
believe.
last train. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was
yeah.
like,
So we might have
right.
been stuck in London for the evening. I forget if this was like a weekend or a weekday. I don't know if we
I
were
don't
going to class
remember.
the next day or not. But it was you, myself, my friend Michelle that I was just speaking about earlier, Tamara, and then Nikita, my roommate,
Yeah,
ended up
that's
kind of
right.
meeting with us later in the night.
That's right. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really fun. I remember just being like, "Oh, this is really cool." But yeah, I just remember that last part, like, "Oh no."
Yeah, I remember it was an interesting night. For me, people that know me, I'm such an over planner for everything. Like, I strategize, and I think that's why I love filmmaking because I'm such a strategizer when it comes to producing movies and whatnot. But I remember that night, I was like a little bummed out, like towards the end of the night, because the places that I had, planned were like, oh, we're not taking in any more people or any more seating going on, like past a certain time. even though we were like trying to do reservations online and everything, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, we went to like that jazz bar or
I
something.
kind of do. Now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh, that's right. That it was kind of awkward, and it was just like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
this is sad. Yeah.
So for someone like me that like over plans to the like crazy extent, like
Yeah.
I was just like bummed out a little bit. But in the end, I was so happy that I was there with, you know, these amazing women that I had met abroad. Some were American, some were from different areas of the UK, different places of Europe. It was just such a great birthday, and I just remember being so excited, and I was like, I wish every day could be this amazing with like these amazing women and like, you know, having these amazing conversations. Yeah, so I mean, Mary and I have been in touch ever since. We've seen each other in person, I believe, just once after our UK life.
Yeah, you're right. It has only been one time, which is insane because we were in the same country now. Like,
I know.
oh my
For those that
God.
don't know, Mary's over in Texas and I'm in Southern California. So yeah, we've only met each other once thereafter. And this was in LA. You were actually working remotely / in LA, if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have I'm fortunate to have a remote job that I can just kind of travel and work. And I happen to just be like, oh, I'm staying in LA. I've lived in LA off and on. So it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be up there. My sister was working up there. And I was like, well, I have a remote job. Might as well go. So I went, and then I was like, I wonder if Karina will be up. And then you happened to be going, I think, at the same time, which was like,
that's right.
We
It ended up working out.
Yeah.
I was headed up there to do a little short film with some friends, and we ended up going to the AFI. What is it? The AFI
the Film Fest.
Film Festival. Correct.
Yeah, we saw Patty Jenkins.
That's right.
And
she was there
Bryce
doing an
Dallas
interview.
Howard. Yeah, it was really good.
And Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele was there as well, which was super cool. He had just finished or promoted Get Out not long before that. So he was like up and coming even more so at that time. So
it was fun. I don't know if you remember this. One thing I remember from that was that weird Uber that we took where like the guy, we opened the door and it was like just like very like sagey, and then like
Wait, that's right. That's coming back to me right now. Oh my God, I had totally forgotten about that.
Because I think he was farting or someone was farting, and we were just like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh, he had like some like moody music, right? Like meditative, like
he was all chilled out. But someone in that car was not, because there was someone else in there, and we were just like, oh my God, it's starting to
had we done like the Uber line where you have multiple the carpool line or whatever they call it?
Yeah.
I faintly remember that. That was like what, 2017, I think, is give or take. Late 2017, I think.
Yeah, either 2000 or 2018. I don't remember now. I'm like, this is all very
and
blurred.
Now it's coming back to me. I remember that image right now. I think I ended up recording like on my phone like the music so everybody could see like on my social media like what kind of Uber I was in.
Yes.
And you and I were just looking at one another like, what is going on? Only in LA. Oh my goodness.
Very funny to me. Very memorable, obviously, as I'm still talking about them.
I had totally forgotten about that, Mary. That's so funny. But the moment you said it, I was like, wait, that's right. The dude was just chilling in his car with some like weird sagey music, as you call it. Incense burning and everything.
Like, he was like, I am not stressed by anything. I was like, yeah, good for you.
Good for you. You have it going on. Oh my gosh. What else did we do in LA that weekend? I'm trying to remember. Was it mostly the AFI festival?
I think so, because
we hung out in Hollywood for a little bit, and we did like a Irish pub for lunch or something.
Yeah, that's right. We did. We ate, and then we just hung out, I think, in that area, because I don't think I was there for very long, or I was going to be leaving. Something that I remember, like, we didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, we just hung out for a day or two. Or was it 2 days? I think it might have been 2 days. Because the AFI festival was one evening, and the next day was, like, lunch and stuff.
Yeah. But
awesome,
it was good. I'm still, like, I can't believe we've only met one time, and I feel like you're like one of my good friends, so I'm just like, it's awesome that like,
isn't that crazy? Like, we have like we're surrounded by people like day in and day out, but like sometimes the strength of your connection isn't only limited to like your city. Like we knew each
Exactly.
other for like I don't know, 4 months when we were
Yeah.
in England, 3 to 4 months, and that kind of kept our friendship going for many years. Where we only have met in person once more thereafter, which is
It's
crazy,
just
and here we are
crazy.
still.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. It's just, yeah, it's great though. That just shows you like how much like, I don't know, travel can really just kind of bring out some like awesome part that, or there's benefits. Like you can meet some awesome people that you're like, wait, you were just like, you're not far from me. And like, look, we have this experience. So
Right,
yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's crazy to I think that's really what I um truly got out of my experience like living in Canterbury and studying over there. Was this like sense of, hey, I can connect with people in a different way than what I'm used to.
Yes.
Like it
Yeah.
kind of sounds a little like tacky to be like, oh, like I lived abroad or I like studied abroad or I made friends all over the world and therefore I am like somehow superior. That's not
No.
necessarily what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. If
Yeah.
anything, I think it just kind of opens up like this new pathway in your brain or like your personality where you're like, hey, like I don't have to be limited to like my hometown or like where I lived and just be limited to people in that area, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And Kent, like for people that don't know, Kent, that university in particular is an international university. So of course it's
Right.
not just British kids, which I only had, I think, like one British person in my class. Like everyone else was from all over the world. So it is like
Right.
very nice. Like hey, we have this experience on top of like being study abroad. It's like, oh yeah, we're actually meeting people from all over. But I get what you're saying too, where it's not like, oh, we're bragging, like, oh yeah, we got to study abroad, we did all this. Like it is a sacrifice. It is a challenge for people. It is like,
Right.
there is a lot that comes with it, but it is something that like I know I worked to get like, and I'm sure you did. Like I know a lot of people do. It wasn't something in our program that was like natural. You had to seek this out. So
Mhm.
it was very much like, okay, I want to have this, and yeah, it was good. It
Right.
just there's so many things. I think my life changed once I started traveling because like I grew up, we never traveled, we never
Mhm.
did that. We just didn't have the money, and then my family was just like not really into travel. They were like, no, we have other things. And so when I got older, I was like, no, I definitely want that for myself. And then it was like, okay, how do I get this? What do I do?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And as you were growing up, like, what do you think attracted you to the whole travel lifestyle? Like, I know you said your family obviously couldn't afford to travel; it was seen as a luxury for many of our families growing up. But what do you think was like guiding you as you were growing up? Like, what was attracting you to the whole travel stuff?
It sounds so corny, but once like we got the Travel Channel, and there used to be this program called Samantha Brown, and she would go
Oh, of
like to
course.
Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got the Travel Channel, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I need to see all of this. I want to see the world. I want to see all these pieces of art. Um, I think film probably also did something. I can't tell you exactly what film,
Mhm.
but I know it was just like something that I was like, yes, this has to be something that I need in my life. And I think it was just knowing that, like, I would hear other kids and they'd be like, oh, yeah, we went this place, we went to that place over the summer. And I was like, oh, yeah, we just stayed in. It was kind of like, yeah. And I
Right.
don't know, like, for my family, like, we're Hispanic and, like, Latin families, or at least the ones that I know, are not travel. Like, they just don't do it. And it's kind of like, no, it's not, not for us kind of thing. And it's like, but why not? Like, we should be able to do it. So, yeah, so it was kind of like a lot of seeing what other people were doing and then seeing things from the world and just being like, I really want to experience that. How
You
can
want to
I do that?
experience the world because you felt
Yeah.
kind of like you were like in your own little bubble in your town or home
Yes.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's really hard for, especially I'm in El Paso. El Pasoans have this kind of mentality of like, no, we just kind of stay here. And I know some people from my school, like from high school, that were like, oh, I'm never going to leave El Paso, and they don't travel. And that's fine if that's what they want, but like that's not what I wanted. And so it's like,
Sure.
yeah.
And you mentioned the Travel Channel. I remember
Yes,
being obsessed with it. Me and my entire family actually were obsessed with the Travel Channel.
really.
Yeah, growing up, it was always Samantha Brown, Anthony Bourdain, a
Mhm.
couple other faces that I can't quite put a name to right now, but yeah, Samantha Brown was like, you know, this luxurious traveler. So
Yes.
she did all the luxury stuff. But then there was Anthony Bourdain that did all the adventure, all the cultural and the food stuff that
Yes.
I just loved both people's energy for like different reasons, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they were definitely people I looked up to. Then, of course, there was like Rick Steves, a couple other like famous travel host
Travelers,
and or adventures on
yeah.
television that just really sparked that for me. And much like you mentioned, films, I grew up like loving film. Like that's what I do nowadays. And film is a great way for us to see the rest of the world without leaving our couches, you
Oh
know, or
yeah.
leaving the theater. In a sense, it's like traveling, but it just makes you feel like the longing for like seeing it in person, experiencing it for yourself.
Exactly.
Like I'm thinking back right now as I mentioned that Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones,
Mm-hmm.
when they go to Baghdad,
Yep.
oh my goodness, Mary, I was like a young kid seeing Indiana Jones going to Baghdad, and I wanted to go.
Yes.
Who's like 12-year-old kid wants to go to Baghdad?
Baghdad.
Like Karina, me. I like wanted to be Indiana Jones. Like that was like adventure, travel, and I feel like in a sense that like inner child of, you know, adventurous seeking child is still kind of in me even at
Yes,
like
of
30
course.
years old.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's so true. You see things. I think for me, I used to see New York and I would be like, I really want to go to New York. That sounds like amazing. And then I used to be like, I hated sleep when I was younger. I hated being told you have to go to sleep, you have to go to sleep. So when I heard it's a city that never sleeps, I was like, oh, perfect.
I'm
That's
sold.
where I want to go. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And then I think it's just one of those things where you're growing up like, oh, you hear like in the stories like London, you hear like, you know, all kinds of stuff, and you're just like, I want to see castles, I want to see water, you know. For me, I'm in the
Right.
desert right now, but yeah, like I need to see all of these things and
You want
experience
to
these
hear
things.
different languages, you want to hear
Yes,
different
of course.
accents, try
Yeah.
different food.
Exactly.
It just
Exactly.
opens up like a whole like realm of like reality for you in a sense.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
people are just like they think, "Oh yeah, there's different cultures out there, but like I don't really care for them and I don't need to see them in person to, you know, appreciate them or whatever." But it's so different. You're there appreciating it in person and it just changes your brain. Like it changes your way of seeing the world and perceiving yourself. I suppose like in contrast to the rest of the world and its cultures and
Yeah.
its the ways of
No,
life.
100%, 100%. I really do
Yeah.
think like you build that connection. You realize, wait, you're like, yeah, we look different, we speak a different language, but we are saying the same thing. We're having a lot of the same experiences. We've all been heartbroken. We're all fighting about like, you know, trying to make it in the world, trying to do our own thing, trying to be our own person.
Trying to
But then,
understand one another. We're
yeah,
all trying to,
exactly.
yeah.
But and then you also get that sense of like, oh wait, like I'm getting myself, like I'm understanding myself better by experiencing this, by knowing like, wait, I'm pushing my limits, but I'm also seeing that other people are doing the same thing and we're all having the
Right.
same human experience, which is like pretty awesome. It's like, wait, it's not so
Right.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's exactly it. It's not so scary once you actually experience it and, you know, talk to the locals. Like there's
Yes.
like the media showing the media just shows like these horrible images about like, oh, the Middle East and Africa and like all these horrible things, you know? But then you go and visit these places and you're like, oh, it's usually just their governments that are messed up. It's
Yes.
not the locals that hate
Yeah.
Americans necessarily, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like for example, like Iran, like we had this huge tension between the US and Iran in the beginning of the year. We thought it was going to be World War III. We're like, oh, a new Cold War of sorts. And yet I kept seeing video after video of Iranians, both in Iran and in the US, just stating their love for the American people and saying that we are not our government. Much like we aren't our government. We are the people of the country. We're not Trump,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
it was just, it was so like heartfelt to see that. Like I was like, at first I was like scared. I was like, oh no, like we're going to go into war with Iran. This is
Yes.
scary. But then you saw that and you're just like, wow, like they genuinely see our humanity and like our similarities more than they see our divisiveness. Like think that's
Exactly.
what travel does. It's travel is not just Samantha Brown. It's not just
No.
luxury hotels where you stay in your hotel in your little resort the whole time. That is not what I'm referring to. That's a vacation. That's
Yes.
not travel.
Yeah.
I've always tried to like assess the differences, like yeah, sometimes I like the idea of vacation like for a special occasion, like
Right.
a 30th birthday, a wedding, a honeymoon. But when it comes to traveling, like that's a lifestyle choice, and that is I suppose, a contract between you and the place you're visiting, that you're there to learn more about them,
Yes.
and you're there to listen, and you're
Hmm.
there to try new things and experience their way of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so eye-opening, and it's so like I see people, and some people have even told me, "Oh, how do you do it? How do you travel so much and all of this? Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I save money, but I also live like when I'm somewhere, I try to live like the people are living there. Like I will go to the local places. I don't try to go to like the chain places, the touristy like places. Yes, like, of course, like you want to see some sites, but I try to balance that and find like, okay, where are the hole in the wall places that people are like the locals go to? I want to find those places. Those are the places that you'll experience more of the culture. You won't get the tourist traps. You won't get like, all of these things that just aren't really
Right.
experiencing that place.
Yeah, and
And
when you hang out in these like local hole in the walls,
yeah.
you have to be careful though, Mary, because you come back potentially with like your new husband. So you gotta be careful with that too.
That does happen. Yeah.
Finding love on the road is kind of a common thing with us traveling sorts of people.
Yes.
Mary and I are just kind of inside joke there, since we both
Yes.
have had some interesting experiences along our travels.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
of course, it's always great to get to connect with locals, both, your age or older or younger, and just trying to get to know them and whatnot. And of course, there is bound to be connection that is romantic. So, a romantic connection sometimes just happens, and whether it's short-lived or the love of your life that you just found in Iceland or somewhere, I don't know. It's just so crazy the amount of people you get to meet and the amount of people you get to share like a moment with.
Oh
Even like I
yeah.
said, even if it's short-lived, it's really interesting. Like thinking back to my whole traveling between I want to say 2015 and 2017-ish.
Hmm.
I was traveling like non-stop. I graduated from university in 2016. I did get my bachelor's degree a little bit later in life. I didn't get it in my early 20s. I was more like mid to late 20s. But I was traveling so much, like every vacation I got from school. I was traveling like a lot during the study abroad program as well. I wasn't only, doing my classes like I should be. I was traveling like every few like weeks. And I was actually traveling a lot by myself, which is something I never had really done before. I just felt like I am here right now. I've never been able to get my ass to England before. Like, I've never gone
Yeah.
across the pond. Like, I'm
Mm.
not going to take this moment and, like, just toss it and be like, oh, I'm just going to see England and that's it. No, like, I've always wanted to see so and so. I'm going to go here and here. And sometimes it was hard to find people that were willing to go with you. Especially when you're making like new friendships and everything. I'm like, no, I'm gonna like go the first week. No, actually, the first week I did actually bring in some of my new friends with me, and we did a lot of England stuff. But once I left England, like my first trip was to Barcelona, to Spain, and I went by myself. I was like, screw it, it's
Yeah.
the first country I'm gonna go outside of England. And at least I speak the language of Spanish, so at least I won't feel super out of my element, per se. That was total bullshit. I was definitely out of my element. But it was such an experience. Like, it was a very short trip. It was like 3 days,
Mhm.
over like a long weekend or something. And I met some amazing people. I'm still in touch with them now. I met a Brazilian guy at the hostel that I was staying at.
Right.
The hostel was kind of like in the Gothic quarter of Barcelona, if any of you guys are familiar with that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I ended up hanging out with him that evening, even though we both didn't like necessarily understand one another, because he spoke very little like Spanish and very little English. He spoke mostly Portuguese. I spoke, Spanish and English, so we try to get by with like the limit of like language. And we were just like both alone in the hostel, and I told myself once I got into the hostel that I was going to go have dinner, but I was also like nervous. I had just gotten into this new country by myself. I was starving and I didn't want to go out at night by myself. So I just, went up to the closest, friendliest face in the hostel. And I approached the guy and I'm like, ¿hablas español? Like I was asking him if he spoke Spanish, and he said no, but I speak a little bit of English. And I'm like, do you know of any places around here that have good food, like anything that's late night or whatnot? And turns out that he had just gotten there like a couple hours before, so he had no idea what was around either, and he was just as lost. And we ended up finding like a restaurant and eating dinner together, like sitting down and having dinner with a stranger I just met like an hour ago that I can barely communicate with was such an amazing, eye-opening experience.
Yes.
And like I said, we're still in touch. I haven't seen him since, but the next morning, after we like had dinner and whatnot, I invited him to join me on a bike tour that I had already signed up for.
All right.
So he ended up joining me on the bike tour of Barcelona,
Nice.
and we had such a blast. It was super cool to connect with someone that was like just totally in a different like life stage. He was a little bit older than me and just different culture, different language, and like I had a new friend, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I love people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just so crazy, like me being someone that's like anxious at times and like was worried about being in a country alone by myself. I like sucked it up. I'm like, there's no other way.
Yeah.
There's no other way than to suck it up, talk to someone, enjoy it, and just be in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Had I not done that, like, I wonder, like, what my trip would have looked like, had I not had the guts to come up to this person at the hostel and say, hey, like, I'm looking for a buddy to go have dinner with if you want to join.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when I first went, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I first went to, when I was doing my master's, because I went to Kent twice. I went and I was doing my undergrad, and I was only there for a few months, and I was like, well, I'm not done with this, so I want to come back to it. And so I went back for my master's. And that was such a rushed process. Like I went to England for like a month, and then I was like, well, I really want to come back. So I ended up doing like the application, everything from the master's within a month, and getting the visa. Everything was to the last minute. Like it was really, really rushed. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go. But in that time, I started having panic attacks. And it was really bad because I was just like, the first one I had gone to the gym, and I had come home, and I was like, oh my God, I think I overdid it because my chest is hurting so much. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I was like, wait, I don't have insurance. I was like, I can't, don't call an ambulance.
Don't get a heart attack.
Yeah. I was like, no, we're just going to like lie down. I think my mom was like, give me 7-Up. And she's just like, Vicks, like, no, you're going to be okay. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I can't, I'm not having a heart attack right now. Like, this is not happening. And so I remember feeling that. And then like, of course, it passed. And then after that, I was at the mall, I think, and then I had another attack, and it was just like, okay, this is getting pretty intense. I know I'm going to be leaving to the UK again for, my master's program, and I need like help because I can't do this if I'm just having panic attacks.
Sure.
So I went to the doctor, and they were like, okay, we're going to give you medicine, and this will help you, but because it's so short of a time, you're going to have to see how it plays out, like if you're going to have side effects and stuff like that. Because I was leaving like within a few weeks of that. And so, no, I ended up going to the UK, obviously, and of course, the first few weeks I was super nervous. I was on the medication, which was helping me, but it was making me very, very sleepy. And I was like, I can't concentrate. I have actual school to be doing, and I can't concentrate if I'm so tired. I remember being on the bus, and I was like, I'm gonna miss my like stop because I'm falling asleep so much. So I kind of eventually got used to everything, and I stopped taking the medication because I was like, I think I'm okay. And I had all the stuff that I do, like my meditations and everything that I do to help, cope and manage my anxiety. And so I was working with those things. But I remember feeling like for a while, and this is even when I had you as my friend and everything, I was like, I'm not connecting with the people on my program as much. And I was just like, and part of that I think was because I wasn't living on campus. So I was just like,
Oh,
I'm not
that's
really
right. You were
here.
off
Yeah.
campus. I
Yeah.
forgot. That's
Yeah. So I
right.
was just like, I feel very disconnected from the school. And then the where I was living was in a really kind of isolated place where there was only one bus, and the last bus was like at 7. So I was like, if
Mm-hmm.
everyone's hanging out past 7, I can't stay because I need to catch my bus. So I remember just feeling really annoyed with everything and just like tired. And I was like, I'm not having a great experience. I'm getting very frustrated with this course. Like, did I even make the right choice? I'm getting scared to like do things. And then I remember, so it was like, we went through the semester, whatever. I think you had left. I had some other friends that they left because their programs were ending and stuff. So I was like, oh man. So in January, I remember feeling like really, really bad. And I went to the counselor and she told me, the ones that survive are the ones that adapt. And I was like, okay, you know what? It kind of clicked. Like, if I want to make this a good experience, I need to change this narrative of like, you know what? I can't do this, or I can't be here. I'm getting too nervous. I'm getting like, my anxiety is just overwhelming and it's taking over everything. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna make an effort to like hang out with people, and people wanted to hang out, but I was just like not seeing that because I was like, no, I'm too like nervous. I have to make the bus. I was making all these rules for myself when I was
Sure.
like, this wasn't necessary, and like it wasn't. I had put all this narrative of like, no, you can't do this. No, it might. What if this happens? What if that happens? And it's just like no. So I had to let all of that go, and like you said,
Yeah.
just kind of do it and just be like, you know what,
Right.
like each
Don't even
day.
give yourself the chance to talk yourself out of it,
No,
kind of thing.
exactly. Exactly. I overthink it. I talk myself out of it when it's like, no, talk yourself into it, or exactly, don't even think about it. Just do it.
Yeah,
And
don't
that's
even
what
give yourself the minute or two that it takes to talk
yeah.
yourself out of something, because then it reminds me actually, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey,
Yes.
where
Yes, I
he
have.
has to say, he signs a
Yes.
contract with this like cult that he has to say yes to everything so that he can really fully experience life, and that his life won't be this boring, mundane, like piece of shit, you
Yes.
know? So it's so funny. Like, that's exactly what I think we're getting at here. It's, of course, you don't want to put yourself like in danger. We're not getting as crazy as like the movie Yes Man does, but you want to be able to say yes to a lot of experiences. And I think
Exactly.
travel and like being out of your comfort zone and living somewhere different in a different country does that for you in a sense where it like allows you for it to be like a little bit easier for you to say yes. Yes, you
Exactly.
know.
Exactly. Because you have to, if you can choose, like, do I want to have that experience? Which I was definitely living this very like isolated experience. And I was like, no, I don't want that anymore. I want this. And you have
Mhm.
to say, yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, it's going to be scary, but yes, I'm going to do it anyway. And
Sure.
it's kind of like, you just like you have to really, there's a narrative I think that we have about ourselves, and it's like, no, I'm going to change that narrative. I don't want to go down that anymore. I'm choosing
Mhm.
something new. And you'll find, and one thing that I find, as soon as I start saying yes, other things start opening up. It's like, oh my gosh, like I had
Mhm.
closed myself off. I did that, I didn't need to do that. And it's just like, wow, I can't believe I let myself get that far. But I'm glad I
Right.
recognized it. And I know it's not the easiest thing in the world, of course, but like you can do it. And that's what's, it
Sure.
changes your life. Like it is one of the
Yeah.
best things that you can do for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mary. I totally agree. I guess the more interesting thing, or the learning that we have to do is how do we apply that once we are not traveling?
That is
How do
the,
we, yeah, that
yes.
is the challenge. I think for me, um, over time, when I don't travel consistently, over time, it is hard to hold on to that.
Yes.
Um, and by consistently, I'm saying like 2 to 3 times like a year, like,
Yeah.
or even like 1 to 2 times a year, to be honest. But I feel like once it's been too long since I've had that kind of, challenge in my life by traveling alone, by traveling somewhere that makes me uncomfortable at first,
Yes.
that kind of gets me out of my comfort zone. I do tend to fall back into the old habits. And that's what I've realized about myself because I was traveling so much between like 2015 and 2017. I didn't realize that I was like still not learning how to apply that into my like everyday. And I think now I'm starting to see that. I'm like, okay, I'm I'm thinking things like doing this podcast, things like
Right.
reaching out to my friends from all over the world more consistently, kind of bring that back to me. And it recharges me in a way where I'm like, damn, I miss like having that sense of like, fire beneath my feet that I hadn't had in a long time. And I'm just like, I owe it to traveling and to the
Yes.
people I've met, but I also feel like I need to figure out how to bring that back into my everyday life and my everyday interactions with
Yes.
people. And
Yeah.
how do I keep that energy up? And how can I spread that energy? How can I get other people to come out of that shell and be like, being out of my comfort zone makes me makes me the best version of myself.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
no, I 100% agree. And especially right now with the pandemic, with no, like for me, I feel like I don't know how to plan. Like I am fortunate that I still have a job, but I don't know for how much longer. And my hours have been cut and everything. So it's like, I had all these plans for this year. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to
mm-hmm.
travel. I wanted to go see you. Like it was all kinds of stuff. And now it's like, how does that even look? Like one, financially, I don't know how that looks. Two, like what exactly, like what flights are actually being, where are people flying right now? Is it even
Mm-hmm.
safe to fly? Is it safe to like, like I feel like Airbnbs or like how clean are they going to be? Like, even
Right.
hotels, like I know that they have their own systems that they're cleaning things, but it is very much like, oh, I have to think of all of these other things. And even if I do go to a place, am I going to have to quarantine? What's actually open? Like, like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much. And even so, I don't even feel comfortable traveling. I want to travel, and it's hard because the same thing, when I'm here and I'm not traveling, it really starts making me feel like everything feels very scary. And I'm like, no, I don't want to feel like that. And it's hard to like, how do you bring that energy? And I feel like, I think like you were saying with the podcast, it's helping and like reaching out to people. We reach out to each other. I reach out to other friends that I have all over the world, and they're all kind of saying the same thing. So it's kind of like, okay, I know I don't feel like I'm not the only one feeling like this right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and just finding like, to me right now, like art, like finding like different things, like to kind of distract myself, is either through podcasts or like just hearing other people's experiences. Like that is kind of
Right.
how I'm bringing it. But yeah, it's a different challenge that we really haven't had
We
to.
haven't had, yeah, like in travel, like when has
Yeah,
travel like completely shut down all around the world
exactly.
before? Ever since like the invention of the plane and like
Yeah,
commercial planes. Like this is the first time I feel like ever, I mean, the closest thing we've had to this was like 9/11. We're
yeah,
like, yeah,
that's
but
true.
they didn't
Yeah,
like fully stop flights. It just became like maybe for like a while we waited to see like, hey, where is the
what's
world right
happening?
now? Where is the
Mm-hmm.
US right now? Where are we as a human race right now? Okay, let's go back to some normalcy. But at the same time, this feels a little bit more indefinite.
Yes, of course.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
because we don't know. That's what's hard. And we hear like, oh, it surges again in some places that have already like come out of it. So it's just like,
yeah.
how do we go about this?
Yeah, and then we don't
Yeah.
have the best leadership, unfortunately, in
No.
some of these big countries that are just, let's open up the economy and like nobody really paying attention to social distancing anymore. There's obviously a lot of other things going on in the world right now that are just kind of steering us away from like the health crisis and are now more about social issues, which is
Yes.
totally understandable.
Yeah.
But it just feels kind of like I've said in the past that it feels like we're in this weird era of the human race where we're just kind of magnifying all of our flaws.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, how do we take them in and assess them individually as a group, as a society? Like, how are we going to be better people after this? How are we going to be a better society? How are we going to advance past the pandemic, past the social race issues, past the capitalist pigs that we have in office, the capitalist narcissistic pigs we have in office. It's just a really weird time, and I feel like it's sad that we don't have travel right now, given that travel in a sense alleviates some of those like hard edges that kind of divide us. Like, you know, it like cuts down like the understanding of like other cultures a little bit. Like, we understand one another, we understand different religions, different ways of being, different cultures all over the world. And I think without travel right now, we're just kind of a little bit, I don't know, like drawing the short stick right now, the short straw, as they say.
Yes, yeah.
Because we don't have that to alleviate anything right now.
Exactly. And I do think, like, I know, for personally, like, I know I've changed a lot since traveling, because I see, like, oh, wait, our cultures are very similar to a lot of other cultures. And, like, they have the same traditions in, you know, certain ways and stuff. It might not look exactly the same, but it is very similar. And it's like, oh, yeah, we have that. But when we're, like, right now that we're not traveling, I feel like people start getting the kind of what we were saying, where you kind of feel a little, no, like, I need to, you know, I'm kind of feeling scared about things now, and I don't want to, you know, I don't know how to go about getting out of this right now. And so it kind of feels, I don't know, to me, it feels like people feel like, oh no, I need to isolate, you know, or I'm just kind of going, you know, into this whole, like kind of, it is a depression, like a little bit of like, I don't know how to like look for the future. I don't know how to look at other people right now, because right now a lot of stuff is happening, and it's hard not to, like, it's hard to see everything else. But at the same time, there is so much stuff happening socially, racially. Like, it's just, it feels overwhelming, because it's like, well, what can I do? How can I help? But I'm also really struggling at this point as well. So it's just, I don't know. It's we're in a very unique time, I think, right now.
Yeah, it's a very trying time. Yes. Absolutely. And I feel like many generations back will say the same thing. Like, these are hard times. These are hard times. But I feel like we're really like in this huge shift as a planet right now. And it could be felt like all over. Like, it's just, how do we make the most of it? How do we turn this into a positive, I suppose, is the question.
Exactly. Because I do feel, and I think this is probably also why it feels so much harder. We have the technology, we have social media to see, like, it's not just our country, like other countries, we see something happening there and we're just like, oh my gosh, like, I feel for these people. I want to help these people. I want to do this. And you're seeing so much, and it's like, well, how can I do all of these things? And it's just, I don't know. I mean, you know, there are things, but it is like, you just want to make sure you're making that, I don't know, I guess just being aware. But then people are like, I don't want to know the news right now because it is overwhelming. And it's like,
right.
It is hard.
It's kind of a balance. You have to, in a sense, be aware of what is going on, but also protect your mental health. If it's deteriorating your mental health to the point that you can't sleep because of what's going on around the world, of course, don't tune in every waking moment to the news and to news outlets and whatnot. But it's also our duty as human beings to know what is happening to our fellow human being. What is going on around the world? What is happening, and how are we either helping or hindering the situation?
Exactly.
You know? So,
exactly. Yeah.
Being self-aware more than anything.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Being self-aware and just being like, okay, like, how do I, you know, I need to do the best I can today, and that's all we can do. And take care of yourself, because, you know, if you want to help others, obviously you have to take care of yourself as well, which is so important. I think people forget that sometimes. So it's just like, got to do that. Yeah.
But. Absolutely. It's interesting to think about, like, I wonder if we can't really get back to travel anytime soon, like, how can we continue to build relationships with people around the world? How can we continue to kind of erase, like, that line of, like, division between, you know, so many of our societies and so many of our, I guess,
just the
cultures. Yeah.
I honestly like I feel like it's going to be something that people have to seek out for themselves. Like I wish like and I even thought like is there like some way like a website that we could be like connecting people like somehow, and I'm sure there's something that I'm just very ignorant about, but like I just like I see for example the other day I was going through Eventbrite and I was like, oh, there's like this London drawing class and they like they're having lectures and different things, and I was like, I really want to do that. And I really, and it's over Zoom, of course, and everything. But I'm like, that sounds really fun. That sounds like a good way to like, one, I get to be creative, but two, I get to like connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking like these kinds of things, like, are we going to just kind of have to do these things and maybe like really incorporate a lot more of like, or encourage a lot more of like, okay, like let's, anyone in the world can connect to these courses or these like talks that we're going to do, which
Mm-hmm.
has been really like I don't know if you've like done any, but like since the
No, not
pandemic
yet.
I've
Mm-hmm.
yeah it's great because I'm like I'm seeing all these libraries and museums from all over the world are opening up all their stuff, and it's like, oh, this is really cool, they're gonna have a talk, you can participate, really cool. I love that it's accessible to everyone now, but or any, everyone with internet, I guess, but yeah, like
Sure.
um yeah, so those kinds of things, but I feel like we're gonna have to look for that ourselves, like that's the hard part because I think it's finding the motivation to look for those things,
Mm-hmm.
and really like trying to like keep yourself excited and hopeful, I think, for whatever the future
Right.
travel is going to look like.
Yeah, I actually, talking about that, I find myself lately thinking long into the future, like in the next year or two, where I want to travel to. So I'm
Yeah,
not planning like anything immediately, but
right.
I am doing some research. I'm kind of like just looking like what is out there and how it would benefit me and my life by going there.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah, I just been eyeing a couple different places, but we'll see if it even comes true anytime soon.
Yes.
It's really interesting to see how like airlines are going to be affected. I feel like prices for things are just going to shoot up.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think travel is going to be as affordable as you and I were used to, which is really sad because I
Heartbreaking.
was
Yeah.
starting to be like, why does everyone think travel's so expensive when you
Yes.
can get anywhere for like $400 to $600 round
Yes.
trip? Um, it's
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna start seeing like prices obviously just go up, which is sad. So I mean, it means that maybe travel is gonna become a lot more of a luxury, even more so. Um, so it kind of makes me feel like, can we do like trips that are closer to home, trips that are just like different states, different neighboring countries, things like that, that maybe you don't
Right.
need to go by plane.
Yeah.
Trains, drive, that's still travel.
No, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot more domestic travel. I think it's going to be encouraged. I don't know if you've seen some countries. I think it's like they're calling them bubble countries where they'll like um, my geography is not the greatest right now, but it's basically like three countries that maybe didn't have as bad of an outbreak, like they were able to
Mm-hmm.
manage it a little bit better.
Sure.
They'll open travel up to those three countries. So like I
Oh,
think
I
it's like
see.
Cyprus, like I think one of the countries was the Czech Republic. Like there were different places
Mm,
that are saying that that's how they're going to do it.
sure.
But then like I have a friend in Portugal, and she's like, oh, we're just opening up travel completely because our economy is so bad that we really can't afford to not have people coming. And they're even to the point where they're like, we're not asking people to quarantine. We just need people to come, which I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
that's scary.
Yeah. But
Let's see what
yeah.
happens after
Yeah,
that
we'll
opens
see.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's it's crazy, but I really do think we're gonna see like a push for travel, but until we feel safe to do it, I don't know that a lot of people are going to be jumping on that
Yeah,
travel, right now.
sure.
But at the same, I do think like domestically, I mean, a road trip was, an option and stuff like that, of course,
Right. I've
but
actually been thinking about renting a cabin all to
yeah.
myself and just kind of doing a little bit of meditation, some writing, some
That'd be
hiking.
awesome. Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah, because right now it seems like that's the only way to get out of your little bubble at home
I think
in your
so.
hometown. So lots of people are going to nature right now because that's the only
That's
place that's left.
yes, yeah. No, I agree. And maybe it's good also for mental, like our mental health. Like this is just a little, roadside kind of, let's kind of just chill for a
Sure.
little bit. Yeah. Like not think about
Absolutely.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I feel like millennials in general have kind of become like the poster boys and girls for travel. And like it's
Yeah.
all over Instagram and like traveling is like the way of life and all this like I guess quote unquote propaganda for travel.
Yes.
Um but it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of people that think, oh, it's just for like the Instagram shot, it's just for the photos and
Yeah.
everything. And yeah, there's those people, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
that get funded sponsorships and whatnot just to travel and get like these beautiful photos and stuff. But I feel like there is also a lot of millennials that are just sick of like the material world. They're sick
Yes.
of the, I don't know, just the way of life. It's just not what they thought it would be. Like once they got these expensive degrees, they thought they were gonna get these great paying jobs and like have a home, a family, and all these like things that are the American dream. And when the American dream failed them, I feel like they turned to something like travel and to experiences and to connection with others.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of the generational difference I'm seeing between our counterparts and like millennials and even younger people. I don't know if that's something you've seen within like your friend circle where you've seen maybe people that are still holding on to like the more stable I suppose safe American dream versus like the uh kind of alternative lifestyle of like uh stability, but like more inner stability and inner happiness, and letting go of material
Yeah.
things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely seen people, and it's unfortunate because I do see people that are just like, no, I don't want that. I want to, I
Sure.
want a house and I want all of these things, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But I definitely see the people that are just like, no, I want, I want an experience. I want to connect with people. I want more than this. And unfortunately, I think a lot of it is because they they were like, I didn't get that, career. I got a contract or something, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
having like a full-time job. So I'm like, well, I might as well travel then. I might as well do some other stuff because this isn't what they told us it was going to be, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see that. And I definitely see people that are a little bit older than us feeling like, well, the way I travel is it's more like you were saying, like a more of a luxury vacation style, not so much like I'm going to get in with like what people are actually doing. And so I feel like they have a very different definition of how they travel versus how a lot of us younger people travel. I'm not saying
Right.
everyone, of course, like this is a very general topic, but like it is I think we're more used to like we incorporate our technology into our travel. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
we're more like, oh, we'll use Google Maps, we'll like use apps or different things to help us. And I definitely think like, yeah, we because travel is very accessible, like it is not as expensive as people think it is. And once you find that and you find like, oh wait, there's ways to do this, and there's so many apps or different like groups that are willing to like help each other out or face like
Mm-hmm.
even like Girls of Travel, which I know we're both like in, like just
Sure.
seeing all these people, and it's just like, oh wait, there is a way to do it. I feel like it's like, you know what, why not? Like yeah, and of course, like you said, there are those Instagram people that are or influencers, and they're just making their money.
Their
They're going
cash.
this, yeah, exactly. They're doing these trips. But then there are people that are like, well, actually, I just really want to see what life is like for them, and that's for
Mm-hmm.
this part of the world, and that's the part that I think people are not understanding. They think like, oh yeah, the younger ones, this is how they travel, but it's like, well, no, it's because our circumstances are a lot different than a lot of other people's, like a lot of the
Right.
older generations. So like just going from my experiences, of course, but like from my parents, like they view travel as one thing. Even like my mom's coworkers, I remember they would tell her, well, how do your girls travel? Like, how are they affording this? And it's like, well, our goal is to travel. So we don't spend money on things that we're like, well, I'm not going to get like the nicest car. I'm going to get a car that works, obviously, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do, go overboard because ultimately my goal is to travel, is to go and experience other things. And having those things, like I don't need a house. I'd rather have an apartment and just being able to like go out, like that to me is better. Like that's what I want for my life. And I remember trying to explain that to my mom and her telling her coworkers, and they were kind of like, yeah, but like it's expensive. And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be. You just have to, you
Right.
have to know what you're doing. And if you want help, like believe me, we'll help you. But yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
always it's too expensive. Why are they doing it that way? But I think it's just a difference in values more than
yeah,
anything, It's just some people are happy with that expensive car, that expensive house, and that
yes,
brings them genuine joy. If that literally brings you joy, then we have no right in saying you need to travel or you won't be
yeah,
happy. That's not what we're saying. But then
no,
there's also a lot of people, I think, especially our generation, that are sick and tired of being used and abused and being a slave to the 9 to 5, and
exactly,
they're it's not that they're lazy. We're like the generation that's always called lazy. No, I think for the most part, I think our generation is trying to change the world. They're like, they're
well,
leaders.
yeah. And we're working harder without benefits, without insurance, without, all of these extra, without a retirement plan. So like, no, we're working. It's just the system has changed on us where it's a lot like here, a lot of the jobs are contract jobs. So you're not getting all the benefits that,
Hmm.
our parents might have had in their they actually had careers. Like we just I feel like have more like jobs, like, it's
Right. I
more,
think that's the big difference.
yeah.
Like you, Mary, you have your master's in marketing and you work as a contractor remotely for
Yes.
a travel company, correct?
Yeah, right. Yes.
So yeah, and it's just like you've tried to get something a little bit more stable and just didn't come to you.
And
So you're like,
yeah.
screw this, I'm holding on to this damn job, but I'm gonna go ahead and make my travel life happen then, if nothing
Exactly.
else is happening for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I struggled so hard. You saw, I remember telling you, like, oh my God, like, I cannot find a job. How can I not find a job? And I finally found this. It took months of using, like, Upwork and all these different sites to kind of finally get something. And I worked with them for, like, just a few things. And then they were like, oh, they eventually hired me. But even then, it's still a contract job. Like, I don't have insurance, I don't have all these benefits. But like you
Hmm.
said, I was like, yeah, well, if we're not going to do that, then I might as well hit the road while I'm doing my job. So yeah, that's
Sure.
but it
Um,
is frustrating. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, do you think it's been worth it? Like, from like all your travel experiences recently, do you think everything has been worth it? Have you experienced things that have really been eye-opening, have been like, leaving a lasting impression on you?
100%. Yeah, it's definitely been worth it. And I try not to look back on things and be like, oh, I regret this or I wish I had done that, because it's like, well, it's there's no point in that to me. It's like, well, I've already done it. Like it's already done. But to me, like, yeah, this whole like, okay, I'm gonna keep this job. Yeah, I might not have the best things. I don't have all the material things. I don't have a house. I don't have a new car or anything like that. But I do really enjoy traveling. I really mentally and like for my own self, it has
Mm-hmm.
changed me so much. Like I don't I'm not in a space where at one point in my life I didn't even want to leave the house. I was so anxious about everything, and it got really bad. And then it was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to change this. And traveling has just opened that up, and it pushes you out of that comfort zone, and it makes you say like, okay, well, I can either do this or I'm not doing this, but I have right now, I'm already like, this ticket is booked. I have no choice, not refundable. We got to do this. Like, don't overthink it, And yeah, no, there's no regret. Like, it is, yes, it's frustrating, like, in some aspects. Like, I'm like, I really wish I had insurance and things like that. But um, on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, if this is what, there's a benefit of me traveling and not having to be somewhere and work in a very typical role, then this has helped. And like again, more than anything, it's helped my mental health, which is something that
Mm-hmm.
took me a long time to realize how important that is. So yeah, there's
Right.
definitely that.
And talking about mental health, I know that you and I connected in Canterbury a lot over that. I think we were at a bar in Canterbury one night, Bramley's or whatever it's
Yes.
called. Remember?
Yeah, I
We were
do.
hanging out with a couple other friends, and I think you and I were just like at it. We're just like, girl, like mental
Let me
health is
tell you.
important.
Yeah.
Anxiety sucks. Depression sucks. Yeah, I remember that. You and I just connected over that, I think, and I think
I
that's
think
why
so.
our like friendship has been so strong over the years. Like, we had a lot of similarities. We were just like, we kept at it. You're like, you lived in Los Angeles and around this year or
time,
so, and we're like, I did too. So it was crazy I don't know what other similarities came to mind, but we just kept at it, and like our conversation just flowed so naturally. And by the end of it, we were like, hey, like, this is super cool. 2 Latina women living in England, studying here, and just kind of living the travel life and battling anxiety, depression, and whatnot. And I don't know, it's just really nice to have that kind of conversation. I don't think I've ever had a heart-to-heart with, like, someone I've only known for, like, a month or two, you know?
In a bar of all
In a bar in Canterbury, England.
No, I 100% agree. It was, I remember talking to you, and I remember that night, and I remember just being like, oh my God, like, hearing your story, and you were telling me more about, like, things in your life, and I was telling you things in my life, and you were talking about boys, and of course, like, everything that, you know, being heartbroken, and everything that comes with, like, travel, and just being, like, you know, in a different place. And we were just, I really remember just being like, oh my God, this girl is so awesome. I hope we stay friends. Because I was like,
you're so sweet. You're so sweet, Mary. But yeah, it's crazy to think about, like, where we were in 2015 compared to now, like 5 years later, as people and as, like, the world has changed since then. Right. Like, I'm thinking back, like, some of the highlights, I suppose, of being over there in that year were unfortunately terrorist attacks. I know Canterbury, I know England, and all of Europe was kind of on high alert when we were there, or when I was there, because the Paris attacks had just occurred, and I had actually just left Paris a couple days before, which was like one of my other travel escapades. I was traveling solo over there, and had a crazy, amazing experience, only to come back and, like, I was literally editing my photos from that trip that very morning, that I had found out that, you know, things had gone down the evening before, and I was just, like, in awe. Like, I couldn't believe, like, the places that I had just walked through were, like, shot at, that people had died, like, in those same, like, streets and everything. It was just, like, mind-boggling. Like, I had seen terrorism from, like, you know, a distance through media, through whatnot, but, like, I felt like it just felt so much more real to me, especially given that I had made, like, friends and acquaintances during that trip that were still in Paris during the attacks, and I was just in touch with them back and forth, like, during the whole situation, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. I think it just kind of made that even more impactful to me. The fact that I felt much more connected to the situation and much more heartbroken about the situation, because I made the effort to go and see that city for myself, you know, and have its a connection with those people and stuff. Had I just been at home in California, seen it on the news, yeah, it would have been heartbreaking to some extent, but I would have been like, that's sad. Poor people. Move on. Yeah, exactly. But no, like, to me, it felt like so much more. Like, it was like, there was a young woman about my age, also from California, on an exchange program in Paris, who passed away during the attacks. It made me feel even more connected to that. I was like, that could have easily been me 3 days ago had the shooting or the terrorist attack been planned just a few days before. Right. It's just like, it makes you just so much more connected to the situations in our world. And I don't know, I'm not saying that I have the right to be like, oh, just because I was in Paris a few days before, I'm, like, so connected to the pain and the suffering that people endured during the attacks. You know, I'm not saying that. I feel, like, thankful that I was not there, because that would have been traumatizing, I feel. But it just, like, kept this energy going, and the rest of my travels, the rest of Europe for many, many months thereafter was still very tense. You can feel it in the energy and the air, and just, like, the way we interacted with one another. Some people were being more friendly to one another, which is something that made me super happy, because, you know, we're here to protect one another and take care of one another, and we're not going to allow, like, extremism to ruin the culture and ruin the cities. But yeah, some other places were, of course, still very on high alert. Like I had gone to Rome, actually, we were discussing earlier in the podcast, after the attack had happened.
Oh, right. I didn't realize it was
So,
after. Yeah.
yeah, it was after. So I think when you and I met initially, we were planning for those dates, but the attacks, of course, hadn't happened yet. So it was just like a week and a half after the attacks where me and my friend Michelle went to Rome for about 5 days. And we went to the Vatican. It was like high alert there. It was like high alert everywhere. We ended up meeting these amazing people from Ecuador that we hung out with. And we were like having like a lunch or something with them. And we kept getting like text about like someone walking around with like a machete or something in Rome.
Oh,
so people were on high ed. Like they were like on edge. They were obviously every little thing was just like out of place. Would be like, oh my gosh, like people be careful. This may or may not be another attack. Obviously nothing came of it. Thankfully it might have just been like some soul person that wasn't mentally stable and just attacking, I don't know, random people, but I think it was under control. Didn't seem to be tied to terrorism, but like I remember that we were all just like nervous. We're like, you know,
of course,
yeah, it was crazy. And me and Michelle had actually scheduled a bike ride tour in Rome.
Oh, right.
I think one of those days, but we kept getting messages that there was like a lot of talk about a potential attack, and her and I chickened out. We're like, I think we're going to have to cancel. And then it was raining that next morning too. So we're like, okay, no, I think we're going to cancel the bike tour. I had totally forgotten about that actually, that we had gone through that whole situation of canceling that tour because we were just feeling too on edge, and we're like, let's stay safe. And like her and I had an amazing time still, but we were still very like alert because, you know, all of Europe was just ready for what could happen.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's very scary. And unfortunately, it's something that I think we have, like, as the years have gone on, we've seen more attacks and we're a little bit more aware of like, oh yeah, there was an attack here and this is something that happened. And, you know, it is very much like, you know, you still want to enjoy, but it is hard. Like, I think for me, I know sometimes it's like, oh my God, like there is that possibility. And I know, like, you know, just hearing like my little cousins where they have to like have drills and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, now they have nightmares about terrorists. And I'm like, you know, when I was that age, I wasn't thinking that. And, you know, and I'm very lucky because I know other people in other parts of the world where, you know, they've had that problem for a long time. But it is very much like, oh wow, like there is like this, it is, you do feel a difference sometimes, I think, especially if there's a place where there's just been an attack and you're just feeling like, oh yeah, there is like a heaviness, but there's also a sense of community that I think people are starting to, especially like that last attack or one of the last attacks in London. I don't know if you remember, but people actually rushed to that person that had a knife, I think.
That's right.
They
brought him down.
subdue him. Yeah. And it's like, I think people are like more aware of, you know, possible danger and just kind of like, okay, we have to unite in a way. So yeah, it's a very interesting time.
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy topic to bring up. It's interesting because I was just in London some months back, and I was on that main bridge, not the London Bridge, the one by the Parliament buildings.
Oh right, yeah.
And I know that I felt different being there this time around, just knowing what had happened a few years back there, with, you know, people being run over by some terrorists that were attacking on the bridge, and people were jumping off of that same bridge trying to, you know, get away from the car or the van or whatever it ended up being. And I didn't say much. Like, I was just like, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to like wallow in it, but I definitely felt it, and I was very aware. I was like, okay, Karina, like, it can't happen again here. Like, it can happen anywhere. It can happen back home in California and San Diego, whatever, you know? But it made me feel like...
You do feel it, yeah. I mean, here we had the shooting like in August, and it feels, I remember you were one of the first people to text me. Yeah. And you were like, oh my God, are you okay? And it was just very much like, you know, I never thought this would happen in El Paso. El Paso is often one of the safest cities in the country. And we just had a terrorist attack. Like, this supremacist came and killed people here specifically looking for Latin people, and it's just like, I cannot believe this happened. And so even to this day, it's like, oh my God, like I can't believe that happened. But I mean, here, like everyone kind of banded together. People were waiting to donate blood, and people had,
Mm-hmm.
like, even driving now, you'll still see El Paso Strong shirts and like billboards, and people are very much like El Paso Strong, you know, like this is, we are a community. And that part is like very much like it's hard, but it's also like, it's really nice to see that that can
Yeah, that
bring,
community and that sense of
yeah,
connection is
yes,
exactly what you're looking for in these dark times. You're looking
exactly.
for people that have empathy and have a willingness to connect to you and, help each other through this. That's the
Exactly.
only way we get through things.
Yeah, exactly. We have to be
Yeah.
there for each other. And yeah, and it's hard. It's not, it is very much one day at a time kind of thing, because it does get overwhelming, especially right now. But it is something that we have to have hope, I think. And that's sometimes hard to find, but it is there.
So it's kind of crazy to think about how right now, like I mentioned before, we don't have access to travel the same way that we've had in the past. So we kind of are getting rid of the tool that helps us connect with each other
Mm-hmm.
around the globe, which I think if it was like a long-term thing where we don't get to travel and connect with others, where we would forget, how similar our cultures really are.
Yes.
So I think it's good to realize that this is just a pause on travel. We're not indefinite. I mean, we are indefinitely not traveling, but we are not permanently devoid of travel.
Right.
And we
Yes.
need to keep hold of it and not forget the things that it provides for us, the
Right.
values it
Yes.
instills, the amazing experiences it gives us, the confidence it gives us. I know from traveling solo that has given me so much confidence. I still remember I was in Paris traveling alone for about 5 days. I had gone to a concert over there for one of my favorite bands. And I was like walking in the metro, just super confident and like I knew what I was doing by that point.
Uh-huh.
And I know where I was going and what metro I was catching and whatnot. And these two French guys came up to me, these businessmen came up to me, and they asked me, like, in French if I knew, like, where the so and so metro entrance was. And I was like, oh, je ne parle pas français, like, I don't speak French, parlez-vous anglais? And they're like, oh, we thought you were local, like, you just seemed like you knew where you were going. And I was like, it just made me laugh, because I'm like, I barely knew French, like, I had learned just a little bit,
Yes.
and I didn't, when I came to that city, I had no idea how to navigate the metro system, but like 2 to 3 days in, like, I think it was 2 days in where this happened, I was already like showing and the outside that
Yes.
I looked confident, even though maybe inside I wasn't necessarily as confident
Right.
about what I was doing. At least it kind of came across as that, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what made me feel better about like myself. I'm like, look at me. I'm here
Yes.
traveling alone
Yeah.
in a country where I barely speak the language, and I'm headed to a concert right now in a cathedral of one of my favorite bands. Like
That's
it was
awesome.
just so like it was such a rush. It was just
Yes.
like this rush of like I love the world and I love myself, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just like I had never experienced it to that extent before, and I was just like, I think I love myself because I'm proud of myself, which is like eye-opening when you're like, I can do so much more than I believe I can. Because
Yes.
initially I was like nervous as hell.
Yes.
Like I was like, how am I gonna do this? I'm gonna like not even want to leave my hostel, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's so I think that's one of the best things is when you're asked, how do I get somewhere from like someone, and you're like, oh my God, you think I'm a local? Okay, let me yeah.
Right,
Let me
these
just
two
take this in.
French businessmen like coming up to me. Like I was like, what is going on? Frenchmen in suits asking the Californian girl how to get on the right metro.
That is awesome. I think that's so beautiful, and that's what's the best part of travel is just knowing, like, having that self love, that like, just like I did this, and it takes a lot. It's not easy sometimes to just be like, okay, no, just, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I yeah,
Yeah.
I know it's gonna, yeah, again, it's scary, but I
And
got this.
scary
Like,
things usually lead to great things.
yes,
So it's just kind of what you
exactly.
have to realize.
Yeah,
And scary things are only scary because we're fearful that we can't do it. It's not
exactly.
because we can't. It's just like our monkey brains telling us
Yeah.
it's unsafe, you're gonna
Yes.
die. Like, no, you're not gonna die. You're just gonna get on the right metro and go to a concert
Yes.
and enjoy your evening in Paris,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Exactly.
yeah, it was just
That's an
really
awesome. Yeah.
it was just really an experience. Like, I remember sitting inside of the cathedral during the concert, and I'm pretty sure I was like the only like Mexican American woman in there. Like, come on. Like, I was in France with a bunch of French people, maybe some like other European people, um, in this concert, and I just felt like I couldn't talk to anyone because I didn't know the language very well to
Yeah.
like connect with them in that sense. Unless they spoke English, then I would talk to them, or Spanish. But at the same time, I was like in awe that I could just sit back and like pay attention to everyone,
Yes.
hear
Yes.
everyone's like conversations in French, and like before the concert, and like as we're waiting for the band to go on stage. And it was so interesting. Like, I was just sitting there and I was like, wow, this is what like dreams are made of, kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
cheesy thing, you know? I was just like, it was just like, I want to continue doing this. This was only like my
Yes.
second trip by myself, I think, at that point, maybe third. But yeah, I was like, I want to continue doing this. Like, this is like the kind of like high that I need in my life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is like what life is meant to be. Like,
Exactly.
I was in awe. I was hooked. I was like, where can I get some more? We're gonna get some more travel. Like, I was like ready to like meet like my next fix, is like you would say. Like, I was sold. And yeah, it can be like, to some people it's like, oh, it's too expensive, like you're ridiculous for wanting to travel so much. And it's like, but no, it's like, I think it makes me a better person. I don't think it's, yeah, I'm saving money by not like having like the fanciest car and fanciest phone and everything, but like it makes me a much better person to go on this like adventure than to have like the fancy car. The
Exactly.
fancy car is nice for like a month or two,
Then it's
3
like,
maybe, and
yeah.
then you're like, did it make me a better person? Did it change the way I perceive the world? Did I give back to anyone? I don't know. It's just, it makes you question that a lot. Of course, like a fancy car is awesome, and like
Right.
a
Yeah, of
fancy
course.
phone is great, but like they're only short-lived.
Yes.
You don't take with you the material, you
Exactly.
know? It's
Exactly.
stuff that can easily be lost, stolen, broken. But your
Replaced.
memories and
Yeah.
your experiences, you can't break those. You can't get that stolen away from you
Mm-mm.
necessarily. So,
Yeah, no, those connections, that experience, those lessons, those
mhm.
stay with you. They do not move. They're not going anywhere. So, good and
Yeah.
bad, they're not always great,
Right.
great things. But, I mean, it is, yeah, it is, it makes you, it creates your character. I think it helps you understand who you are as a person. And I think that is what is ultimately what we're all trying to do in a sense. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it is,
absolutely, Mary.
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, I guess kind of thinking about like your own experiences, you just mentioned that it's not always good, that
Yeah.
there's lessons in there, and
Yes.
obviously that's just the way life is. Like,
Right.
there's going to be travel and travel related experiences that are just going to be like awful experiences, but they're going to build you, they're going to build your character, your resilience, your ability to cope, I think.
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
there's anything that comes to mind, something that you've endured during your travels, something that you've endured living abroad, some like hard lessons that you had to come. I mean, you mentioned a little bit about anxiety and depression, and you had to learn the
Right.
hard lesson of saying yes rather than
Yeah.
no,
Mhm.
and not giving in to your own inner
Yeah.
self doubt and inner critic, I suppose.
Right.
But do you have anything that comes to mind when it's like, aside from that, like any experiences you may want to
Yeah.
share?
Yeah, of course. Like one thing that I will I won't ever do again. I won't say that I won't do this again, but I will be a lot more cautious is traveling with boys and traveling with, because I've traveled with a person that was already my ex, and it was not great. And it was, I mean, it was fine. The trip was fine, but it ended kind of badly. And it didn't ruin it, but it did make me feel very much like, wow, this is like, what did I just do? Like, why did I stay with this? Um, and I've also traveled with another uh, to meet a boy, and then it didn't work out, and it's happened twice now, which I'm like, you think I learned this lesson? But and it always ends up me being really heartbroken, and it's like, and I feel really bad about myself, and it's always like, no, I don't want to let a person have that control over me. Like that doesn't, they don't get to define me, and they've ruined. Well, yeah, things got ruined a little bit, but I was like, it's not, I don't want that to take over that whole experience. Like for one of those experiences, it was my graduation, and like it was bad, and like I won't go into too many details, but yeah, it ended up with me being really heartbroken, and I just remember crying on a bus in Ireland, just bawling my eyes out.
Oh
And then we
no.
eventually made up, but it was just very much like, what, like this whole, my graduation is supposed to be a happy thing, and this has very much taken over everything else. This is all
Sure.
I'm focusing on, and it's really upsetting me, because I was like, this is the last time I'm probably going to see some of these people, because everyone is from all over the world right now. And
Right.
yeah, so it's, again, I don't want to say I'll never travel with other people, or especially boys, especially if they're not even like that significant to me at the time. Like it's kind of a new relationship, and we decide, hey, let's travel. But I will be more cautious about like making sure like the things I want to do are still there, and that, you know, obviously get what they want to do. Obviously, we do that as well, but also just making sure like I am heard, and like that is a really it can be hard sometimes with people, like again with
Yeah,
relationships.
you got to choose your company
Yes,
well, I
yes,
suppose.
yeah,
That
yeah,
goes with anything, not even just
exactly,
travel. Choose your
exactly.
company wisely.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and then as far as bad things, like I definitely um yeah, just being more aware of myself, I think, and just being like, okay, I want to not let fear take over anything. Like I want to be like, okay, yeah, this is, I'm just going to do this. Like it's not going to stop me, you know, and just kind of again changing that whole idea in my head of what I think, all the bad things that could go wrong. My anxiety is telling you like you need to be in fight or flight mode all the time, and it's like, no, I don't.
Right.
Like I appreciate your concern, but I am actually fine, you know. I can do this, you know.
Hmm.
So it is a lot of like uh, there is like that sense of like some of the stuff I'm like, I wish I had kind of said yes instead of just being a little, I was like no, and at the time I was like no, this was probably the best thing for me, but really
Hmm.
I'm like, I think I could have done it, I just didn't want to admit that, so I just pretend like, oh yeah, no, I didn't need to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
This actually reminds me of something I read. I think it was like on one of your blogs or something, Mary. I don't quite remember.
Uh-huh.
But I remember it was a description that you had put in your bio that read something to the liking of um, something like avid traveler who used to have debilitating anxiety but now only has anxiety.
Yes,
I
yeah.
love that. You take away the
Yes.
debilitating aspect of it, but you're like, this is what I'm
Yes.
living with. But
Yeah.
do you think that's mainly given that you travel and saw the world and whatnot? Like, do you think that's the thing that made you finally remove that debilitating aspect of your anxiety?
Yes.
Or okay.
I'll be honest. Like yeah. So like I kind of mentioned earlier, I really, for 1 year, I was like, I think I was 23 or 24. I did not leave the house. I was like, I am too scared. I don't, I was very angry at a lot of stuff. I had just moved back here from LA. I was very upset about things. And I was like, I just can't with the world. And I think it was, my mom finally was like, I can't with you anymore. You're going to see a therapist. And she made an appointment that day, and she was like, you're going. Like, and I felt really bad because I was like, well, this therapist has like taken out their time, like they've made room for me, so I'll go, but I'm totally not going to follow up on this. Like this is not my
Sure.
thing. And then I went, and I was like, oh wait, okay, this is maybe helpful, and I kind of just gave it a chance, and that really helped me. And that you mentioned that you went to school later in life, like you finished your
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's later. I also did the same, and I was really hesitant to go back to school and like finish everything because I was like, who needs school? Like, I can find another way and stuff like that. I was very anti this school
Yeah.
for some reason. And then obviously, like, after I worked with a therapist, I was like, okay, no, I do need to finish my bachelor's degree. So I did that, but I did that. And that's when I studied abroad the first time. And that's when it was like, oh, wait, something has just like
Clicked.
snapped. Yeah, like it clicked. And I'm like, wait, I am like, I've been like closing off all these doors to my, to the world. When I did that, I made that for myself, and it's like, that's not what I need to be doing right now. I need to be opening that up. And
Yeah, and that's
so
what led
that,
you to the master's program
yes,
in
yeah,
Canterbury.
everything led
Yeah.
me to so many things. It opened up like so many doors. But yeah, it was going from that to like, okay, it was debilitating. And now, yeah, I still have anxiety. Yes, I get nervous. Like, I get dizzy. I get a stomach ache. I get all kinds of stuff that happens when I'm anxious. But I'm still like, I'm going to be in that, arena fighting for what I want to do. And that is travel, and that is
Yeah.
experiencing the world. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I
yeah.
feel like so many people can relate to that, Mary. So I applaud you for being able to be so self aware and
Thanks.
being able to know that, even though you may live with it for the rest of your life, that you do
Right.
not let it debilitate you. You don't
Mm-mm.
let it bring you down to the point where you close off from the world. And I think that's
Exactly.
so important. And I think right now in these crazy times, a lot of us need to be reminded of that. That we can't close ourselves off what we really want, and the reason we may or may not be depressed, it's, the longing for self-acceptance and connection.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's really it.
Yes, yeah, and to know you're okay. Like, I think there's so many things that can make us feel anxious and depressed and overwhelmed. I mean, it's so easy now, but there you have to find like that connection, that way to like say, wait, I it's not going to stop me though, like that
Hmm.
whole idea. Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, it's not some people it's not going to be as easy, and that's okay. Everyone's on their own path and their own journey. So, yeah.
Absolutely, Mary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing talking to you like always.
Yes.
I learned so much about you. Like I said, me and Mary have known each other for 5+ years at this
Yes.
point, but it's always amazing to sit down with you and talk to you and kind of dive into the world of travel and the world of mental health.
Yes.
I know we
Yeah.
usually text a lot about these topics, but it's always a lot better to sit down and actually have a full-on conversation
Conversation.
about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and that things are looking good in El Paso, Texas. And I hope you can come visit in California very soon.
Yes, yes. That is definitely needed to happen. Yeah.
That's in the plans, even if it's not for 2020. It may
It will be
be
there. Yes.
next year, but we'll make
We'll
it
make it.
happen.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, Mary, have a great one.
You too.